the Earthborne Games podcast. I'm your host, Anders Fisher. And with me today is the normal Earthborne crew. Sans, our normal intrepid host. The real Anders couldn't be with us today, but he'll be back next time. But with me today is Evan Simonet.
Hey.
Maxine Newman.
Hello.
And Andrew Navarro.
Hello there.
Well, Anders is way better at transitioning into banter time, but
this is pretty much what he would do.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's banter
immediately
time.
make some slightly meta call. We're recording on a Friday. We normally record in the middle of the week, and recording on a Friday, and especially a Friday that we're desperately trying to get some files ready by the end of, is it's a different vibe for sure.
Yeah, I think we're all coming off of doing a ton of work today straight into the podcast. So I feel like we could just do a live on-air work meeting.
I'm trying to think, we try to be pretty transparent about stuff, but there's just early stuff we don't want to share yet. I was trying to think of how much of that meeting, on-air meeting, would need to be redacted.
Right. Yeah, exciting stuff, let's say. And I think, like you said, I definitely talked about what we're working on with some people at PAX, but I don't remember who.
We met, yeah. So that's we will talk about that in a little bit in our segment. But we just got back from PAX, and we met a bunch of you there. I can't even keep track of. Speaking of not keeping track of who I told what, Andrew, but we met a bunch of podcast listeners, and I can't call you all up by name because I met so many of you. But it was really cool. Sometimes I just kind of feel like we're recording this podcast. We're just meeting and then it's over. And obviously we get some engagement from fan questions and stuff, but to see all of the people who regularly listen in person and hear their stories from engaging with the podcast is I don't know, it's kind of invigorating.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool. It's nice to know that that people listen and have been following. Some people have been following along for 3 years at this point, which is pretty awesome.
It's pretty amazing. I remember when you first pitched doing this podcast to us. I listened to very kind of scripted NPR podcasts, and I kind of envision this more scripted Earthborne Games podcast, and you were like, no, I think we should just talk. And I'm like, just some people talking into mics. I'm like, who's going to listen to us rambling mics?
Turns out a bunch of people.
Yeah. We appreciate you all.
And I wouldn't been able to do a script really. That'd be asking too much of me. It's very hard for me to follow a script.
Well, let's just imagine the work it would take.
I know. Yeah. No, it would be, we'd have a full-time podcast production person who's just writing the scripts and whatever else.
Well, now we could just have ChatGPT write the script for us.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
No.
I watched this video a couple days ago. I think if we wanted to, we could have a Andrew rants about AI section of the podcast every episode. But I watched this video recently about how AI is kind of plateauing, as it's not really advancing any farther anymore, and it can't really learn much more than what it's already learned. And they talked about this thing that I'd never heard of, where in order to feed the AI more information, they have an AI working on information to feed another AI. So it's just loop.
But wouldn't you get some kind of drift where at first I'm sure an AI that reproduces human stuff, you feed the AI more AI stuff and it's pretty close. But at a certain point, wouldn't you get artifacts where the AI is drifting farther and further away from human stuff, and eventually it's just AIs feeding AIs?
I think that's exactly what you get. I think that's kind of diminishing returns you get from doing that. But I don't really understand the rationale behind it. honestly. Like, I don't know why you'd think you'd get something good out of that.
They're definitely moving at least into new media types because I forget the name of it, but OpenAI just released their video generator
Oh,
that can like generate whole clips of videos and like save continuity between different shots and stuff. So like, which is pretty impressive. Even just a year ago, you get some really bizarre, like barely recognizable things, and now it's like it still does weird AI stuff, right? Where
Yeah.
like things just appear from behind other things, but it's
right.
like
Can it do
actually
hands yet?
video.
I think that's the big thing.
Yeah,
Once it
hands
does
are
hands,
weird.
then we're cooked.
There, but like anytime something like it's really bad at object permanence. Like anytime something passes in front of something else in the video, the thing can just disappear, Jason Bourne style, behind the other thing, or like appear out from behind another person.
Uh-huh.
That's funny.
Yeah, the temporal coherency or something. Maybe that's a different thing. But I remember hearing about that too.
Sounds legit.
Yeah, I mean, where it doesn't really track what's happening. It's just every frame. It's almost just reinterpreting the what's happening, the subject matter, and everything.
Oh, sure. Like it's born fresh into the world with every frame.
Yeah. Kind of when Corey was talking about that animation exercise where people are given a frame from a previous animator's work and then they just add to it, almost like telephone, but it's animation, and
Yeah.
it ends up being really weird and chaotic.
Well, I feel like you could even see that in that, like, even more produced that you guys have seen that Coca-Cola AI generated ad,
Yeah.
like with the trucks kind of moving, sort of like they're sort of in perspective, but also not. It's very weird. It makes me feel uncomfortable.
I heard they also had to go in and manually fix all of the Coca-Cola logos.
Oh, so,
like
so it has been touched by humans. It's not
Yes.
just AI. Ah,
But
false
but
advertising.
But I just thought it was funny that AI could not accurately reproduce the Coca-Cola logo, a thing that is everywhere. You know, like,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it just has problems with text in general. Like it can't, for some reason, again, can't do it. Maybe it's because it's, living in a dream, like that Star Trek: The Next Generation episode.
Yeah.
Well,
that
I saw one of
Batman
the
episode.
generated videos that was like a news report, and except for the text, it looked like I would have 100% believed it was just some like local news station or whatever. But then the text was like weird glyphs and nonsense, right? Like, but otherwise, I would have totally bought it at like first glance.
Yeah. Yeah. Dangerous.
But before we dive into talking about PAX and where we've been for the last week, when this episode goes live tomorrow on Saturday, either before this episode or shortly following it, we're going to send out a GameFound update to all of the backers about production schedules and stuff. I guess, Andrew, do you want to talk any more about the information in that post?
Sure. Yeah, because that's what I've been doing this week, though. So I meant to get going on it right when I got back, but I needed to take a day off. It's my son is screaming in the background.
So like yelling at Fortnite?
Probably. But I've spent like yesterday and today working on that almost solely. There's other things I've been doing, but it's mostly been that. And my light is acting bonkers right now. 1 second. It's like oscillating between all the different tones of light. There we go. Oh,
You don't want the disco cast?
no, it's very distracting. I'm just going to turn it off. Yeah, so I really pretty much just came from finishing up the draft. Corey's reviewing it right now, and we're getting James Naylor, who's coordinating all of our fulfillment, to confirm the fulfillment windows for everybody based on their region. Because I think so. This update has a ton of information both on production and on fulfillment. But I think ultimately at this stage, people just want to know when they're going to be getting their orders. So that's that's what the update will round out with. But hopefully after everyone reads this, they'll have a much better idea of where everything is, when they can expect to get their stuff. And it'll answer a lot of questions for people who are kind of champing at the bit to know more about when we're going to start shipping. So, yeah, I think the only thing I think I can add here that's not going to be covered there is just hearing my voice apologize for us not being able to hit December like I hoped. When I first set that date back in January, a lot of things have happened since then, and not the least of which being bringing Maxine on board. So originally that December date was taking into account that we were pretty much done with everything. I mean, there was still some more to do, but compared to the first Kickstarter, there was very, very little left to do on all the products we were offering. So I thought December was being generous, where I thought for sure we'd start fulfilling probably like in September. Was kind of my best guess. But then, Maxine joined, and then we were like, okay, well, we gotta push it off so that we can. Well, we weren't pushing it off because it still said December, so I'm like, all right, we can take a couple months.
Yeah, we had the time.
Yeah. Let Maxine get in there and give us notes and make improvements, which you did, and so that was all good. But then after that, then it just comes down to production and trying to keep that like 100% on track. So as early as like a couple weeks ago, I still felt pretty good about being able to start fulfillment in December, like I've been saying. But I think I never really made clear to people like what starting in December like truly meant. And that really became apparent to me as I was writing this update, that I think I could have shared more of like what the overall plan was prior to this, just so that people had proper expectations. Because I think with the date of December in there, everyone maybe assumes, regardless of where you are in the world, that they're going to get their product in December. But that was never necessarily the case. And I implied that by saying, we're going to start fulfillment in December, but I think I could have been even more explicit in that. So I apologize if there's anyone who is crestfallen by the slight delay. But long story short, we're going to get going, I think, in January now, out of Delano. So U.S. backers close to Delano are going to get their stuff first, and then everything will kind of spread out from there in the U.S. and then into Australia and Asia. So we're going to be fulfilling for everywhere outside of Europe and the UK. Will be fulfilling outside of from the U.S. productions. But since we're also making add-ons in Germany, those still have to make their way across the ocean. So like all those productions are pretty much done at this point, but now they still have to get on a container and then come across the ocean. So the simple stuff will start going out in January, and then in February, I think that's when it'll really start to kick in. Because barring incident with the freight shipment, because it could always get like held up in customs or something, so there's no telling. But if everything goes smoothly, that should all show up in February, and then we'll really be rolling there once everything arrives. And then in Europe, we're printing at Ludafact, and not only are we printing our copies there, we're also printing our foreign language partners' copies there. So that further complicates things. So what that means is, so at Ludo, they'll be finishing up the core game in January. And then I already have confirmation from Frank that at our account manager, for long-time listeners of the show, you know who Frank is. our account manager at Ludofact, and we should be able to, assuming we get all of the localizations in by the end of January, we should be able to go to press and have everything done in February, and then Europe and UK will start fulfilling from there. So everything is going to, I think, ultimately come together faster than it would if we were to say, like, do everything in one spot and then ship from there all around the world. Like last time it took, I think, a total of 7 months to complete fulfillment from start to finish, because it was Italy in May, and then we finally like wrapped up in November, December.
Yeah, in the US.
Yep. So it'll be a shorter time frame than that, which is nice. But it's really going to be, I think, mostly in the spring. So we'll see what James says with the final dates. We'll have like the range of when you can expect your stuff, but it'll be very soon. Regardless, we're definitely in the home stretch. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and comment on the Game Found, jump on Discord, and Corey and the team will answer those. But hopefully it'll become much more clear after the update goes out.
And yeah, like you said, like we had hopes that we could still hit that December date, even fairly recently. And it could be, we appreciate, we know people have really wanted an update, especially in the last couple of weeks as we hit December. But it can be kind of difficult to give definitive updates on this stuff when there's this many moving parts. Like we could update you all on every single thing as it comes in and as we find it out, but like there's so many interdependencies here that we would then be updating you constantly on shifting dependencies, and that in itself would be messy and confusing, and so we really want to be as clear and transparent as we can be, as once we can give you a more like definitive answer, right? One that we feel confident in all the pieces fitting together.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge. Is like I was going back in my emails and like seeing like where I was like trying to get all the information we needed to finalize this stuff, and that chain started in August when I started that email chain with with Frank at Ludo, for example, and I didn't even know really where we were with production with truly were with production with Delano until I met with them on Wednesday of this week. And then it became clear to me, like, okay, well, there's no way we're going to be able to start going in December. But up until that point, I'd just heard, yeah, it's possible. I should have just said, okay, all right. You tell me it's possible. I'll just assume that we're not going to do it. But I like to be optimistic. So maybe that's, it's just a problem with me. But and I should have learned my lesson by now. But
just be absolute pessimist about all things.
Not pessimist, but I've said this before. It's like I should just add months to like anytime anyone tells me anything. But I don't like to do that because just like the backers, like I want to hit the goal. I want to get going in December. So if I hear, oh yeah, we'll be able to do it in December, I'm like, all right, we can do it in December. So yeah, but I think to your point, Fisher, I think like that has been the challenge for me, is wanting to share information when I'm more secure in that information. So I don't have to go back and forth and you know what? Never mind. I said that thing. I take it back.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well now this part of the add-ons isn't going to get to this place until this date. So now these things aren't going to go until this date, and like you just get swamped in like information and changes that like in itself make you even less sure. Even though you have all the information, you are just more confused.
Yeah, I do think though that there does seem to be, now that we have such a so many backers, I think there is a category of backer who would like that.
That's fair.
I think they're in the minority, but I think they definitely would. But they're also the ones who are the most, who really just want as much information as possible and are maybe irritated with us for not updating them like with every tiny little thing that happens.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the spectrum, I have the people who came up to me at PAX and went, "Am I getting this game?" And I go, "You tell me." And then they go through their phone and they're like, "Oh yeah, I am getting this game." And I'm like, "All right, sweet."
Yeah, well, so that's what like gave me some hope about this, because Corey's been on my butt about it for several weeks, like, because he's in there in the Game Found comments, taking all the heat. But what made me feel like, you know what, it's okay. Most people are totally reasonable. Were the people who came up to us at PAX. Like, I didn't talk to anyone who was mad about anything or who was like super impatient. Like everyone I spoke to at PAX was delightful and was just excited to get the game and looking forward to it. And to your point, Fisher, most of them are like, "Yep, I'll get it when I get it." It's like a little, gift to myself. Like, I'll pack these things, and I don't remember half of them, and when they show up, I'm like, "Oh, great."
That's how I see Kickstarters and Game Founds, is like, I'm buying myself a present in the future. And it's like, I don't even want to know when it shows up. I just want to come home one day and there's a package and be like, "Ooh, what's this?" "Oh, it's this thing I packed 4 years ago." Or like,
yeah, but all told, like, I think as far as like crowdfunding campaigns go, we didn't hit the month we wanted to, but we're pretty close. Knock on wood, barring some horrible incident that we can't possibly predict, we should be pretty close to our target date. So I think that's a win. But for the next campaign, I'm going to try to. I think I'm just going to set that thing way the hell out there. And then,
here's a year of padding.
Yeah, exactly. And then people say, "Is this really going to come out in like 2030?" I'm like, yes. And then they'll get it, in 2026 and be excited.
Yeah, I'd be pleasantly surprised. This is like, when I worked at a restaurant, that's the hosts always would tell people these like really long wait times for tables that were just like super inflated, so that they, and they're like, I'd rather they be happy that they got their table early than, mad that it's 10 minutes over my initial prediction.
Exactly. I did that host job once. It was stressful.
Yeah.
Talk about stress. That's a job.
I did not envy them. I was serving the tables, which seemed easier.
Yeah, when you're the host, like all you're doing is dealing with hungry, impatient people. Well, that's my production update.
Sweet. Thank you, Andrew.
You are welcome.
I wanted to put that
try
up
to fix my light here.
Huh?
I'm going to try to fix my light again. I'm going to turn on my camera for a second.
Well, yeah, I wanted to put that up front so that we got to any of the information as quickly as possible. But as we've kind of alluded to in other stuff, in our other discussions, we were at PAX Unplugged last week. So I thought it'd be fun. People on the Discord have been curious to hear. We debuted Eidolon. It was the first chance people got to play the game, and we shared a bunch more information about it, to necessitate people actually being able to play. So, how did PAX go for everybody? How do we want to talk about this?
Well, I've been talking, so anyone other than me can go first.
I can share my
my
experience.
How was PAX for you?
Briefly first. So I think the most memorable part for me was just meeting Sean in person for the first time.
Chub Frog.
Yeah, Chub Frog, yeah. And he and I we both had a bit of reservations about doing demos, just because he had never done a demo like this before, even though he's knows so much about the game and the rules and everything. And I just was telling him I'm anxious because I always get ahead of myself in demos. But we both were practicing the morning of and the evening before, and yeah, Sean ended up just crushing it. And right when he gave the first demo, it was just like he shifted gears, and it's that feeling, you know, when you're anticipating giving a big speech, and then when you start, you're just in the flow, and it's fine. So yeah, he did a great job. I managed to not get ahead of myself and slow down, so it went good for me too. And I forgot how the demos just sort of compress time, and like the day just flies by. And the crazy thing was I can't believe I had forgotten this from last year, but there was no shortage of people interested in doing demos. The tables were always filling up. There's no
Yeah, I was
like
gonna say quite
respite.
the opposite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But we had a few more people this year, so we were able to, like, Sean and I were tag teaming like a table and taking turns and stuff when we could. So yeah, it was a pretty great experience. And yeah, there was one night where yeah, Sean and I got to eat in. We had pizza, and we were chatting, got to know each other better. So, and I got to spend more time with Joe too, because Joe is like in Ohio, and so we only see him, us Twin Cityites only see him on the webcam. So yeah, it was cool for a variety of reasons, and everything went really fast.
So for the Earthborne demos, we weren't sure how many people were gonna be brand new, just curious to learn about Rangers, and how many people we would get from the first printing community who were curious to play the expansion. So I designed a little expansion demo, and I got like a bunch of cards from our expansions printed at this local factory here, since we don't have copies either yet. So I got them quickly printed, and to end total count, how many demos did we do of the expansion content?
Yeah.
One.
Was it just mine?
It was just
Yeah.
yours.
And that was supposed to be Mindfisher, and then you happened to relieve me to go to lunch right when I was setting that up, and I was really nervous about giving that demo, you know, even though I had prepped for it and everything, and then you showed up and took care of it. So it was a little bit of a relief for me. So
Oh, good.
yeah.
Yeah, I ran one demo in which one person was an experienced player and everyone else at the table was not. So instead of running the expansion demo, I was like, "Hey, do you want to play a spirit speaker?" And he was like, "Yes, I want to play a spirit speaker. What is that?" And like, so I like explained the whole spirit speaker deck to him. It was great.
Yeah, the actual delivery of handling the demos went really well. Everyone was really receptive and picked it up quickly. There was only one little hiccup, and it was the last day, second to the last demo, and everyone in the hall was visibly tired. So the people I was giving the demo to were tired, and it was a kind of a staggered approach where I started giving the demo to two people, and then after I did the initial pitch and the basics of the rules and everything, two more people showed up, and they didn't want to like have me start over, so they did their best to just and I did my best to just bring them up to speed. But that was the only bumpy one, and every other demo was great, and people loved it. So
Yeah, I was impressed when you passed me the Legacy of the Ancestors demo. Two people were experienced, and then two people were newbies, and one of my experienced players was playing the Spirit Speaker as well. And like, you know, I was always part of the reason we didn't just do all expansion demos is, you know, mild spoiler for Legacy for people who don't know, but it goes underground. You'd find that out the moment you looked at the box. But so it's a very different experience from the kind of woods and outdoorsy kind of vibe of the core set. And, you know, ultimately, to new players, we're selling them the experience of the core set, so we want them to experience that. So I was a little nervous about like showing them the underground areas being a little too much of a change of pace from like, you know, standard Rangers. But I will say, like, that Legacy demo I gave is one of the better demos of Rangers I've ever given, as far as people being excited and interesting things happening. And like, I wish I could have shown the experienced players. I don't actually know if they listen. I forget if I asked them if they listen to this podcast, but I wish I could have shown them more of the expansion content. That was my only regret. But the new players were like loving it. And I did at least get to preview. At the end of the demo, we traveled and I previewed like some of the upcoming stuff. So like one of the other terrain sets, the fungal forest. And so they got to see a little bit of what makes the expansion cool. So hopefully they weren't too bored by hearing all the rules of the game again.
Nice.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so Andrew, you didn't run any demos this time, right?
I did not.
You were mostly talking with fans and selling the game. So how was your PAX?
My PAX was, I think, ultimately very good. It started off pretty bumpy because of the product that we got for the show. So that first day, I was a little stressed out because it's all worked out. So just spoiler warning to the end of the story. Everything worked out, but so it was my assumption. And again, like we're solving this. We're going to be doing bi-weekly meetings with. I'm going to be doing bi-weekly meetings with Delano so they can keep me posted because they're. I don't know. I need to ask, or else I'm not going to get information. So I had been working under the assumption that the product we were going to get for the show was going to be from the run, like maybe some of the first ones off the line or what have you. Originally, like our original plan, like I just outlined earlier, was that we'd already be either done or like through in the midst of fulfillment when PAX takes place. So I'd put in an order for everything. In hindsight, I'm glad we didn't get everything because we would have had no place to put it. Our booth would have been a bunch of boxes.
Yeah, just a pile.
Set up the demo tables on top of a little scaffolding of boxes.
It's a Cubert.
Yeah, exactly. We probably could have done that if we'd gotten everything. I don't know what we would have done. It would have been a very ugly booth. So anyway, we opened up the copies of the game for the demos and for the kind of the display table, and we immediately saw that there were issues with with some of the cuts of the cards, where some of the information on the cards was too close to the edge. It was pretty consistent. And also there were cards that had like creases in them, like 2 to 3 per game. And I was like, this is a nightmare. Usually you'll find damages or, little messed up things, or in the punch board too, the way it was punched, like the B side was like way off.
Yeah.
And the rule book was like the cuts were off, like everything was slightly off. Since I was thinking this was from the run, I was like, oh my God, I'm just having like flashbacks to last time where we had to open up every box and take stuff out and replace it and double sticker everything. And I was like, we're going to have to do it all over again. It's happening again. But then I finally, so I was like, sending emails to Delano, asking him what's up, and was finally able to talk to Nick at Delano at the end of the day. And it was there that I learned that the copies that we got for the show were a special run that they did specifically for the show so that we could have something. Otherwise, we would have nothing, except for the trail maps. Those are easy.
Didn't have the expansion, had the expansion trail map.
Yeah, we had 400 copies of the Arcology trail map. It's like so much more than I ordered. I'm like, what are we doing here? But anyway.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Evan.
I was just gonna say there was a few map enthusiasts who didn't care if they had the expansion or not, and they bought it. So
yeah.
Nice.
Well, and I think people we showed it to were like, "Ooh, that's cool." So like, it definitely was fun to have it there as just like a showpiece. But anyway, I learned they did this run specifically for the show, and that while they were working on it, they were calibrating their new card cutter, which accounted for the which explained the cuts on the cards and the creasing. And I learned that both of those things had been fixed for the full run. They'd also fixed the punch board for the full run. I learned on Wednesday that that Nick sent the rule books back to press also to fix that issue. So I was pretty upset, and I spent like a good, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes yelling. Well, I'm not really yelling, just let's say speaking forcefully.
A couple other members of the team, their Uber passed you while you were outside of the
Trader Joe's.
Trader Joe's. Yeah.
Huh? Yeah.
We're-
Were you in the car, Evan?
No, Joe and I were hanging out together about 50 feet away from Andrew, giving him his space.
Okay, that's right.
And then
Well,
Rob
they just said,
and
we
Sean
passed by
us
Andrew
in
and
the Uber.
So, like, we passed by Andrew and he was gesticulating while.
But Nick was great. You know, he let me get it all out. He was not defensive or anything. He was apologetic, and just explained to me what was up. And he told me about it being, the run being done specifically for the show. And I was like, man, you should have just opened the call with that, because as soon as he said that, like all of the tension and anxiety I had just left my body. So that was just a tremendous relief. But I do wish they would have calibrated their machines on something that we were not planning on selling. That would have been nice. But who knows? Maybe we wouldn't have had anything at the show. If that were the case. So anyway, we ended up like discounting the game at the show. But then every sale we made, we had to give this little speech about the contents, and if you find anything in there that you can just contact for replacement parts. Like, it felt like anytime we were making a sale that we were trying to talk people out of buying it, and that didn't feel good. But in the end, we sold a lot of them, so we'll see how many of those people come back and ask for replacement parts. But most people just didn't care. Didn't care. Just like, give me that thing. It's fine. Like, the card cuts, like, a lot of people are like, I wouldn't even notice that if you hadn't have pointed it out. So then at that point, then I stopped showing people the card cuts and just started showing them the creased card, because that would bug me if I were a customer. So anyways, the show started rough, but once it got going, it was really great. Just like last year, it was so awesome to talk to everyone coming up to the booth. It was so great to see so many people who were like listeners of the podcast. I met Haley, who wrote that amazing review for us on Board Game Geek that detailed all the environmental aspects of our game. Super exhaustive. She was super cool. Met Darren the Dependable.
Yeah, I got to meet him too. That was awesome.
Yeah, so that was really cool. And then many others.
Met Turd the Third's brother.
Yeah, brother-in-law. Turd the Third's brother-in-law. Brother-in-law of Turd the Third was there. Because we signed his trail map for him, I think. So that was so cool, and everyone just and so many people just thanking us for this thing we put into the world, and how much they appreciate it, and not only the game, but the work that we're doing on the manufacturing front. It was just really great. And in addition to that, it was great seeing so many former coworkers. There were a lot of them there.
Yeah.
It was great seeing the Chip Theory people. I got to have a conversation with Josh Carlson and Andrew Chesney from Chip Theory at the GameFound event, and it was really great to spend some time talking to those guys. And there was a point on Sunday where I think Corey and I were out, so we needed to try to schedule a shipment for the product that we didn't sell at the end of the show, and people suggested we talk to event services. So we wandered all around the show trying to find event services, eventually found it, but it was this like curtained off series of booths that apparently no one had, like there was no one staffing those booths for the entire show. So eventually, Brian at Delano solved that problem for us. We were able to get our boxes onto the Cephalofair pallet because they also use Delano for fulfillment. But while we were back there at the back of the hall, it's like Corey and I were standing there, and then up comes walking Steve Kimball, and former head of Z-Man, former FFG producer, and then Jeff Tidball walks by. Jeff and I worked at FFG forever ago, and then Jaffer, also former FFG, comes walking up. I was like, and we were the only people around, and I was like, man, this is something else. This is really great.
Well, yeah, it's cool, like, over time, how all these people you were close with for so many years kind of go all over the industry. Because, like, Jaffer's at CGE now, right? Like, Jeff, which company is Jeff with now?
I forget what his publishing company is, but he was there promoting kind of a big dill.
Yeah, that's right. With the pickle
party
suit
game. Yeah. Yeah, they were all wearing like red and black flannels like lumberjacks. But yeah, it was and then we bumped into him at dinner too. Anyway, it was great, and it's so cool having the opportunity to go out and remind you like how tight knit the tabletop community really is. It's great. Yeah, super fun.
And kind of on that topic, not only tight knit, but like how much of the tabletop community is in the Twin Cities these days. I was struck by, before the show, Shut Up and Sit Down released their 6 games of the year, and Earthborne was on the list, even though we didn't technically come out this year. We were on their list. When we were watching it together, like in the Airbnb before the show, and I was struck by the fact that of their 6 games, 3 are from the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
So there's us, there's Leviathan Wilds from Mooncrab Games, and then of course Arcs from Leader Games, all within like a few miles of where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Well, I was mentioning to people that, yeah, Sam from Mooncrab, he and I were at one point in the same RPG group. It's just kind of, and we're still kind of part of the same group. I'm just on alternating weeks from him, so it's just wild. I don't know.
It's a small world.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are in the opposite groups, but you're in like the same world, right? In your RPG game?
Yeah.
Which one of you is the B group?
I'm in the B group because I preferred that. We were at a stopping point when I took time off on A sides, which is what we call the other group. Mm-hmm. So I decided to just keep going with B sides because that's all I had time for. So, yeah.
Well, the one other thing we did at PAX was do playable demos of a little game called Hub World Eidolon. We should have had Corey on this episode. He could have talked about the tables.
Well, we still need to hear about Maxine's PAX.
That's true.
Oh yes, yeah. Apologies, Maxine.
No, it's fine. It was. I mean, Evan mentioned the demos. It was. I did a lot of demos.
Yeah.
So likewise, it was really cool meeting people and introducing them to the game. There were like so many players who had come to the table having like heard of Earthborne Rangers but knew nothing about the game, which I thought was really cool. There was one person who came up and wanted information on Eidolon, but knew the game as Corey Game, which I thought was very funny. But they didn't know anything about the actual game. They just knew it was Corey Game, which is great. A lot of people who were very familiar with my past work, which is really great. And people were very, very patient and very open and very like kind. And it was just a wonderful experience. My voice was totally dead by the end of the weekend. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I ate 3 cheesesteaks, each worse than the last. The first one was the best. The first one was incredible. I waited like 40 minutes for that cheesesteak because the terminal market was so packed.
Where'd you get the first one from?
The first one is in the terminal market at the place that was just like steaks. I don't remember if there was a name, but they just had a big sign that just said steaks, and that's all they sold was cheesesteaks and not cheesesteaks. The second one I got was from a bar inside the terminal market that had like burgers and steaks and like other things as well, and that one was still pretty good, but not as good. And then the third one I got was at the airport. And that one was terrible. That one was just sad. But yeah,
that sounds sad.
it was sad. It was like wet. It was gross. I only ate like 3 bites of it.
Was it a great steak escape? Do they still have those?
It was Geno's steaks, and Caitlin had read on, my partner had read online that they were supposed to be really good. So I was like, oh, that's perfect. I'll go there. I want one last cheesesteak before I leave. And I was like, ugh. It's so bad. But yeah, it was great. I got to meet up with a lot of people, a lot of friendly faces. I likewise saw some old coworkers, which is awesome. I got to say hi to Nikki Valens, which is awesome.
I thought it was hilarious that Nikki and I have the same haircut right now.
Yes.
I was like, twins!
Yeah, it was a wonderful convention. Yeah, I wish I'd gotten to see more of the show floor, but I did get to see a lot of it in the mornings when it was like there was no one around, so that's pretty cool.
Well, you were nonstop doing. You've by far did the most Rangers demos.
Yeah,
you were a machine, Maxine.
Yeah.
Well, it was like there were people waiting, and I didn't want to, keep them waiting. So as soon as the one group was done, they'd sit down, and I'd be like, "All right, here we go."
That was another really cool thing about everyone waiting to do a demo. They were all really cool, and that they had the option to look visibly upset and kind of convey that, but none of them did, and they're all just really, grateful to be there and happy to be there, and enthusiastically jumped in once window opened. So that was cool. I was grateful for that because I always felt so apologetic, doing the demo, and there's all these people waiting to jump in, and
our demos run a little long compared to some, just because we want to show off the game at its best, and it takes a little time, and so it means it's kind of hard to get as many people through. And people always ask us if we do like a waiting list or something. But we've always just done first come first serve, because like, with a waiting list in the chaotic show floor, you can't just like have an empty demo table sitting there waiting for somebody to come back, and you're not sure if they're gonna.
Yeah.
Like,
if you give their spot away and then they show up, like that would be pretty bad.
Yeah. There was only one moment, at least at my table, in which there was more than 4 people waiting. There was like 6 people waiting, and only 4 of them could sit down and play. But 2 of them were very graciously like, "Oh, we'll just watch. Like, that's totally fine." And yeah, it worked out. Like, there was no, conflict there.
No fist fights at the Earthborne booth.
No.
Well, no, that would have been awful.
I do remember this at one point towards the end of a demo. One of the people getting the demo was like, he paused and said, "You look very tired." Normally I look tired, or just in this moment do I look tired? Hopefully it's just in this moment.
I'm sure I looked very tired by the end.
You all looked great. What are you talking about?
Well, I had the most, I think, kind of scattered con experience I've had in a while. So we were demoing Rangers at our primary booth in the exhibit hall, and then we were showing off Eidolon over in the demo area. So it was like, on the map it looked so close, but actually when you had to walk back and forth, it kind of felt
it was not close at all. Yeah.
But
you're the only one doing running double duty.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were running all over the place.
But so we had those tables over there in the demo area where we could get like a full 8 people playing Eidolon constantly. And so I was kind of on this duty where I was kind of giving everybody else breaks. I kind of fell into that role because I had some meetings throughout the weekend with various designers. And so I knew just because of virtue of my position, I knew both of the games probably the best of anybody, so I could kind of bounce back and forth. So I'd run over, give the Eidolon guys a break, jump back over, give some Earthborne folks a break, and like, so I was kind of doing a little bit of everything, but it was kind of nice because I could get this change of pace. You know, I came over and gave that Legacy demo, and then I went over and did Eidolon demos, and then I chatted with people for a while, just at like the table selling copies of the core game and things. So it was actually kind of nice, the like constant change of pace and the ability to do different things. I found that a little bit refreshing, though. Just it was funny in giving people breaks. I like would realize that I had not taken a break myself. You know.
Oh no!
I was so concerned with who all got breaks around us, and then I realized, like, Andrew, you said something to me, and I was like, I have not, like, I ate a protein bar walking between the two stations. But honestly, like, when you're moving like that, and we just bring sandwiches, so we don't need to go and try to hunt down lunch. Like, it doesn't feel. I don't know. I just kind of feel like in the flow of stuff usually.
Yeah, I'm full of like this anticipation energy, and I kind of it's almost like an appetite suppressant. So I was never really deeply hungry ever, but it was good to have time to recharge too.
Yeah, the closest thing, like, even when I took a break, I just walked to other booths and chatted with people, so. But one thing, because Corey and Rob primarily ran our Eidolon table that we haven't talked about too much on the podcast, is Eidolon itself. So yeah, like I said, we had 8 seats running demos of Eidolon the whole show. And honestly, for its debut, it went really awesome. Like, I think, obviously you can jump over, for those of you who go to our Discord, you can jump over to the Eidolon channel and hear reports from some people who played, but we had like really good reception on the demo experience. Like, basically everybody who played it loved it. And like, obviously you're going to say that about, the people who are excited will talk to you about it, but even, a game like Rangers, which I really believe in, isn't necessarily for everybody, right? And like, I think a lot of people have really good time playing it, and demoing it, but like, sometimes you get somebody who's, it's not necessarily the game for them. They prefer something a little different. But like, Eidolon was very, like, the demo was very well received. We had like experienced Netrunner players. We had people brand new to card games. We had like a wide gamut. And basically everybody found something in the demo. Now I just sound like I'm selling the game, but legitimately, like,
we are selling the game.
Well, yeah, I guess. But people come here for insights, not salesmanship. I mean, I think it is, but it is
meaningful though. Like you said, like you've been on the ground floor of a lot of games being debuted at shows, and like, and I've not had to do that myself, but I've heard reports, and it is not always smooth sailing,
Yeah,
so.
Not always. Eidolon has the benefit of not being in like an established IP where people have like strong opinions. They come
That's
in
true.
That's
true.
But we do have the association because of like Michael Boggs as a designer, and like some of the echoes of Netrunner you can see in the game. We have an association, and like even then, like a bunch of the folks from Null Signal came over, and they were sending people over to us, and which we're really grateful for. And like a lot of those established Netrunner players still enjoyed themselves. I think that like the time we put into making this demo deck that we showed off, for those of you on YouTube, here's some of the cards we showed off. Like, I think some of these made their way on
screen
Discord, but I think the effort we put into this deck really showed. Like, we spent a bunch of time honing like which cards we used from the card pool, and like specifically prepping this experience and making sure that it really showed off like the basics of the game really well in a really well-rounded way that mirror matched against itself really well. And like everybody was playing the same deck, but they had different seekers that they could play against each other. And so like mirror matches sometimes in card games can be like, a little samey, just by their nature. But like all of the work and testing we put into this, I think really helped out how the game kind of showed itself off in a demo experience.
I think it also just shows how having a different seeker can change the experience, because they are a mirror. It is a mirror match, but we also had 4 different seekers you could choose from.
Yeah, and I think my one regret about our Eidolon table was just how crammed it was. We have like 8 chairs, all 4 games of 2 people across from each other, and it worked pretty well. But we had like these high hopes of being able to sequence it where we're teaching 4 people at once on either side of the table. And when that worked, it worked pretty well. But often we'd have like 2 people finish a game quickly and stand up, and then 2 more people will sit down in the middle of the table, right? And then you have to teach these people while there's people playing a game like on the outside of the table. And so you're either leaning over that game, or you have to like go and awkwardly kind of lean in over the shoulder of one of the players.
Yeah.
And so like that experience got a little cramped sometimes. And so if I had to get into your personal space trying to teach Eidolon, I'm sorry. My apologies.
Well, next year we'll see. We'll maybe get 2 tables, or maybe even 4.
If
Right,
we
you're in a circle and you're stuck in the middle.
so that I could kind of get between people without getting in their bubble, that might have helped. I don't know.
Yeah, but also like I think it really goes to the accessibility of the game, to the fact that sometimes if like Corey or Rob were busy teaching, they would just hand the quick start rules to people standing around, and then when they sat down to play, they're like, "Hey, I got it." Mm-hmm. Yep, which is awesome.
We managed to fit the whole rules on just an 8.5 by 11, and like people could go through that pretty fast and kind of figure out the basics.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that does kind of, this topic does kind of transition to our first listener question, which is from Cleanse, who asks if they can get, quote, all the info about Hub World Eidolon and EBR from PAX. So I guess, did we share any new info? He's curious on things like how far along is everything, which we talked about Earthborne a little bit already. Will there be a print and play TTS demo for Hub World Eidolon? Will you create an online card database for Hub World Eidolon? He has all sorts of questions. So I guess while we're talking about Eidolon and some of the things we shared about it at the show, Andrew, is there any, I guess, like, what insights do we have for people about Eidolon that we haven't shared already?
I would say stay tuned for exciting news about these demo decks and where and how they might be available with the start of the new year. I think we can also say that it's looking like, again, things can always change, but it's looking like now we're probably going to launch the GameFound campaign end of March, beginning of April, around there. So you can you can set your calendars to vaguely the end of March for the launch of our GameFound campaign. For the online card database, I'm just going to assume that someone is going to build that on their own. I think we're definitely going to do an online rules reference like we did for Rangers, but the database, someone else is going to do that and do it better, and be able to spend more time with it than we can. I guess maybe I shouldn't assume that'll happen, but it seems to happen with every card game, so I can only assume that it probably will.
Yeah, I mean, like, our philosophy generally on Rangers has been just to support the fan community and making the tools they want, right? Like,
right.
So I imagine we'll, like, if an absolute need for something that is not otherwise being created is there, we'll kind of assess at the time. But
yeah, I'd be shocked if someone doesn't build a deck builder. I mean, at this point, it's so easy for people to do that because so many of these deck builders already exist. They just swap in one game for another.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how far along is everything? So I think really so the art still a ways to go. Like Evan did all the art for this demo deck.
Yeah, the demo deck I'm showing here and the pictures you see online of all these cards are not evidence. This is not reflected in the whole card pool.
Right.
we
So like
prepped this for this deck specifically.
yeah. So obviously Evan will have art in the set, but our goal is to just to bring in a pretty big pool of artists to work on this, and they'll all kind of be in a range of a type of art. But there should be a lot of room for self-expression on there too. So I'm really excited to see who we get on board for that. That's going to be awesome. So still a lot of art to do. The set is pretty much designed. Like I think we have a lot more cards designed that are going to be in the course that are going to be in the first set. Is that correct, Fisher?
Yeah, so design-wise, Michael's designed about 2 sets worth of cards at this point. We weren't quite sure on set size for a lot of the design and development, and so we kind of took that card pool and honed it down to what we want in like our first set. So we have a bunch of extra cards, but those extra cards aren't necessarily a self-contained set in themselves. So while we don't have like the whole second set designed yet, we have enough cards to fill it. Like it'll just be a matter of kind of creating an environment out of like using all the other cards we have and some of the other ideas we have to kind of form into a more coherent environment that's like has all of the things you need like to be playable in its own set as well. So let's call it like a set and a half is already done, and Michael already has basically all the rules are written. We still got to do a lot of layout, and obviously there's like refinement on that, but we're pretty far along. We're way farther along in design and development of Eidolon than we were of Rangers ahead of our ahead of our original Kickstarter.
Yeah, absolutely. And the rules reference document is already, I think, in really great shape. That thing is massive, and and I feel like it's very well written. Anytime I needed to clarify something when I was teaching the game to the Covenant guys, I was able to get in there and find what I needed. So I'm really happy with that as well. So we'll also have this like really great resource right from the beginning for people to use.
Yeah, like as you alluded to earlier, our plan is to put that online so that people can very quickly look up anything they need to and have this live reference that we update with each set.
Yeah. So pretty far along, but obviously still a long way to go. We're right now, I think, Evan, is it correct that like Rob and you are currently building the artist pool of people to reach out to?
Yep.
I think that's probably going to happen, relatively soon.
Yeah. I think very early in the new year. We're just working on some documentation as a supplement for artists to look at and get kind of a primer for the setting and the style and that we're looking for and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And beyond that, we shared, this deck of cards, as well as the quick start rules for people to actually be able to play. And I think if you head over to the Hub World Eidolon channel on our Discord, you can go check out images of that. At some point, we'll probably share like a cleaned up official version of that. But right now, I think that channel has a lot of the cards and rules if you're curious to kind of snoop on the stuff we showed off. So that was PAX. Does anybody have any other thoughts coming out of the show? Any other last things before we move on to other questions?
I got to go to a live Daggerheart Christmas special.
Oh, yeah.
That was right across the river. That was pretty cool.
That is cool.
Was it standalone?
Cool. Yeah. It was like a one-shot adventure. It was a lot of fun. There's apparently a lot of like video game industry people there as well. Like Sam Lake was there from Remedy. I was blown away by that fact. I was like, I was in the same room as Sam Lake. Like, oh my god.
What did Sam Lake do? Is that Alan Wake's brother?
Alan Wake too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. He is actually really involved with Alan Wake, but his name's Sam Wake.
Sam Lake.
Sam Lake. Okay. Well, there is also a lake in Alan Wake, so maybe
That's true. That's true.
Right.
I wonder if that's why there's a lake.
Well, cool. But yeah, one last thank you to everybody who came out and saw us at PAX. We really appreciate all of you, and it's great to see you in person.
Yeah, 100%.
Hope to see more of you all next year.
Or at UK Games Expo.
Yeah, that's true. We'll be there as well.
We'll be there.
All right. So we already talked about Cleanse's questions, so we can get to some other listener questions here. We've got another one about PAX, but then we've got a nice backlog from all of you from quite a few episodes. We've got some deep Rangers cuts. Like, we'll often have to decide which questions we ask or don't ask, and we've got some kind of random specific Rangers questions, and so we can kind of dip into those. So to start us off, from Machine Epsilon asks, Elizabeth Hargrave's talk at PAX made it sound like she would be a really good fit to design a game published by Earthborne Games. However, her games are always very much set in the real world. Would Earthborne Games be interested in putting out a game that is aimed for realism by Elizabeth or by, any designer? Or do you think that Earthborne Games will always stick to fantasy or fictitious settings?
I think it really just depends on the game. I would love to work with Elizabeth. I got to meet her this summer in New York, and she was awesome. I just liked her as a person. She seems like someone who'd be a fun person to be friends with. Open invitation to Elizabeth Hargrave if she wants to pitch us on anything. I'd love to publish something of hers. I don't really want to pigeonhole us into doing like just science fiction, or because right now we'll have 2 science fiction games. I feel like it's really important to I think I've said this before. I felt it was important for our second game for it to not be Earthborne, because I feel like if our second game was also Earthborne, then our third game wasn't Earthborne, then people would be like, what are you doing? And I think this just sets the standard that no, we can actually branch out and do other things. So similarly, I think if the game is right, if the theme feels right, then yeah, we can totally do something in the real world. I have no objection to that whatsoever.
Cool. All right, so now we're going to dive into some more Ranger-specific questions, I think. We're diving into our backlog here. So another one from Cleanse asks, is there an equivalent to carrier pigeons in the valley?
Do people count?
the poor messengers. Equate them to pigeons.
Zechtzal courier pigeon.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the couriers. I don't know. I mean, what do you think, Maxine? Do you feel like we could do something with a carrier pigeon or raven style animal as a plot device?
I think that would make sense, as long as it's. I wouldn't think that it would be like a network of pigeons or ravens, but like I think if a courier used one as part of their job, like that would make sense. But I imagine that most deliveries are hand delivered by a human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So next up, SM Tilson asks, how do you address power creep when making expansion materials especially like Stewards of the Valley, it seems natural to want to make cool cards when you have thought more about the game. Or is this something that the Elder's Book of Uncommon Wisdoms can address by buffing earlier cards? I added that. SM Tilson's question actually says the Elder's something something. Well, I guess I can kind of address this question a little. I'd also be curious to hear, Maxine, your thoughts. But Stewards of the Valley doesn't introduce too much power creep simply because it's mostly starting cards. So we're not really... We don't need to make better cards than the existing cards. We just need to make different cards, right? And play to different archetypes and add whole new sets. So there's just more options for your starting stuff. I think the power creep question probably is a little more relevant as it comes to like Legacy of the Ancestors and the reward cards that you're progressively earning as your campaign goes on. And I've talked about this a bit on past podcasts, but like ultimately, we want some of the rewards you're getting to increase the power level of your deck. And like, so there is going to be a bit of power creep as you go along, but people who have seen some of the rewards in the core set, maybe ones that are a little powerful, a little early if I'm analyzing my own work again, but like there's not a ton of granularity, right? Rangers, you could kind of number creep and add things, but we only give ourselves 3 approach icon spots on the card. We could find a way to cram in more, but we're not that interested
Please
in
don't.
just like linearly.
From a graphic design perspective.
Yeah, okay, maybe I shouldn't speak for Evan. But like we're not interested in like linearly scaling Rangers to be more and more powerful. That's not quite the type of game experience we really wanted out of it. So one of the big priorities that I've talked about before is prioritizing like differences in kind and having like incomparables in our reward cards. So things that just work differently than other things, and especially as we go into new areas and new expansions, we're adding new mechanics to the game, mechanics that you might only come across, for example, in Legacy Underground. There's a couple mechanics that are going to specifically be highlighted there. And so that opens us up to create rewards that specifically work really well when dealing with those mechanics. And so the more we can do that, where there's rewards that are really good in certain areas and worse in others, it kind of keeps your deck dynamic as you're trying to make decisions about how to customize your deck as you're traveling around the valley. So there'll be a little power creep, and like a little intentional power creep in rewards, but not a ton. But I'd be curious for your thoughts as well, Maxine.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. In general, with card games, anytime you're adding new options, there's always a little bit of power creep because new options means new combos and new abilities that work with other abilities that you maybe didn't expect. But in general, we try to with expansions offer like horizontal progression. That is to say, like side grades instead of upgrades, cards that just work differently than the cards that you already have. That's especially true with like backgrounds and the new backgrounds and new specialties. Like the Spirit Speaker isn't more powerful than any other specialty. They just play very differently than the existing specialties. And similarly, some of the stuff that I'm working on right now, those will play very differently than to the specialties and backgrounds that you already have. So it's just like a new experience instead of just a bigger numbers, Yeah.
Yeah. I think you could argue that the Spirit Speaker, when they get rolling, might be a little more powerful, but you have to work for it.
You got to work for it. You got to set up. I mean, I liken them to an artificer in that once you get like your engine going, you're very powerful, but it takes a lot of work to set that up.
So much work.
It's pretty cool when it pops off, though.
Yeah.
It is. But that was one of the hard things about demoing it too. Is like our demos, we only have like 45 minutes or whatever, and like the Spirit Speaker is like so much set up for like second half of the play session payoff that the poor Spirit Speaker like gets everything in play, and then it's like demo over.
Demo over. Now you got to get up.
All right, SM Tilson also asks, I just learned that Andrew Navarro did not invent the word arcology, and now I have a question about the arcologies in EBR. In the definition I found, it mentioned a massive vertical structure. Doesn't the fact that the arcologies are underground make this more difficult in the Earthborne setting? What necessitates this verticality in the setting of Earthborne, or why did the builders of the arcology find the verticality a necessary/worthwhile feature?
So I don't know if that definition just comes from SimCity, because there were towers with bubbles on them in SimCity, which is where I first heard. And I think the only place I've ever heard arcology was from SimCity 2000. I think. I don't think they were in the original SimCity.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
But to me, it just meant a massive structure that was self-sustaining, that one who lived there would never have to leave. So I don't think, since it's made up, I think it's a made up term anyway. I don't think it necessitates it being vertical, but you could make the argument that it's vertical from the perspective of the bottom of the arcology going up to the surface. It's very vertical. So it's just a matter of where you're standing.
Yeah, I don't believe that the verticality is a necessary part. It was coined by this architect, or I think he was an architect in like the late 60s.
Was it the guy who did like the cool like speculative architecture and did all
Yeah. Yep.
like Paolo Soleri, it looks like.
Yeah. I've seen some of his stuff. It's cool.
And then it was popularized, and the reason it shows up in SimCity, well, I guess I shouldn't say I don't know exactly why the SimCity people used it, but like several sci-fi authors between the 60s and the 90s used it in their works, and that's I think why it was slightly more in the public consciousness.
Yeah. So So apologies to that architect for not taking into account the verticality in the definition. But yeah, like to me, it's just a self-contained structure, and because of that, in my mind, an arcology could take any shape. It could be like really wide and flat, it could be super tall, it could be underground, it could be all over the place, as long as it meets those requirements in my mind.
I think technically the Mall of America could qualify.
Mall of America's an arcology.
You can now live in there if you want.
There are hotels attached. Like I think, or are there apartments attached now too?
Well, I was just gonna say, I was obsessed with dead mall videos for a while, where people would just walk through malls that were dying and closing and being shuttered. But I've recently seen that some malls are turning into living spaces, but like some storefronts on upper levels of a mall on the East Coast or something are being turned into apartments. So maybe if the Mall of America eventually suffers the same fate as other malls across the country, then it could become an arcology. If it
could you imagine like
center? Could
you imagine like living like in an old Borders bookstore?
Oh my goodness,
that'd be so odd. Like
I'm into it.
Yeah, me too. Like I
they
would be immediately excited.
Divide it up, and it would just be weird.
No, you get the whole thing.
I call dibs on one of the log cabins in Camp Snoopy. Sorry, Nickelodeon Universe.
Yeah, Nickelodeon Universe, exactly.
That's so funny.
All right, Artemis asks, what was the art brief for the translocator? Is it intentional that there is an outline of an egg in the middle of the art? So this is a very specific question. Evan, can you tell us a little bit of about the translocator art for context?
I found the art brief. I found I couldn't remember if Andrew gave me the idea, or if it was my idea, or if the artist just made it, because there's a lot of art briefs. But apparently I wrote, this is just a little bit of the art brief. The shape of the translocator had been elliptical like an egg. However, as it is now, the outer shell of that egg has split apart into several puzzle piece shaped fragments, all of which orbit a central cube-like structure, which is the source of an eerie light. So So yeah, I guess it had always
Nice.
been an egg shape. It just was, while it was functioning, it explodes out, and
That's
we're-
cool. What does that
awesome.
mean? What does that mean? I wonder.
Yeah, where did that? Because I'll tell you, I remember the stuff I passed off to you, and I definitely didn't have like I usually pass to Evan for our art process like what the card does and like what parts of it are necessary for the mechanical function, what the art should reflect as far as like function in the game, and then I would pass any lore stipulations like related to the story that the card needs to fulfill. And I'm pretty sure Translocator was fairly bare bones. So
Well, yeah.
do you remember where your inspiration for that came from, Evan?
Well, I think Andrew might have pitched it, because the key thing about this end was that it was a very alien piece of tech that you're not really supposed to understand fully how it functions. At least that's how I understood it.
Yep.
Sorry,
Yeah, and I,
Andrew, you
remember,
could say something.
I was going to say, I remember we definitely met about it, but I don't remember if we met about it before you wrote the brief or after the first sketch came in. Mm-hmm. But I do remember talking about the sketch not hitting what we wanted, because we wanted this feeling like that it was kind of exploded out and orbiting on a kind of like, if you would imagine like a cylinder, and then it would come back together. But I don't remember if we talked about it before the brief, or if we just were talking about the brief in relation to the sketch and talking about how it wasn't quite hitting it. I do remember that.
I do remember. I remember key points and highlights of art briefs, but the reason it's difficult to track that on a timeline in my mind, because the art briefs exist on a Google Drive and in as a Google Doc and on my own desktop in sketches, and so just I'm always assembling these things from multiple sources, and it's not very conducive to just like remembering in a linear way.
Mm-hmm. So the short answer, yes. It is intentional.
All right. Grisamentum asks, what is the process you go through when designing a path deck? Assuming part of it is taking inspiration from real-world environments, which path decks have been the most difficult to adapt from reality, and why? So,
Wow.
Maxine, you've been designing some path decks. I don't know how much we can talk about.
Yeah, I was going to say,
designing.
like, this is great for Maxine because she's like in the thick of that right now.
Yeah.
It's true.
I think you could probably talk around it. This is more of like a design philosophy thing as opposed to like a specific thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely want to take inspiration from the natural world and the ecology of the particular terrain that we're adapting, but also like nudge it a little bit towards sci-fi sometimes, and introduce like weird elements, and then figure out how those weird elements interact with the natural world and how things might have like adapted in different ways or evolved in different ways since our timeline. I would say that like one of the path decks that I've made is very different in that sense, and not quite that way, but I won't go into detail. But some of the ones that I'm working on right now, like I have 8 Wikipedia tabs open currently about like various real world animals and whatnot, and like how they operate and what they eat and where they live and stuff like that. So yeah. As for which is the most difficult to adapt from reality, I'll leave that to Fisher and see which from the core set, or maybe perhaps from Legacy, was the most difficult.
I think, yeah, I don't know if I have like a snap answer for which one was the most challenging. I think it might have been. Oh, go ahead, Evan.
I was just going to say, I'm playing through solo again, and I always felt like the old growth drew a lot of more into leaned more into like fantasy elements with the cloud hive and the swarm, and just the tremendously huge trees, and stuff like that. Like
Yeah, the old growth, some of what that played into was the like there's a couple things that come from like a lot of the core set path sets, like Brooks designed a lot of them, but I had a pretty strong input, and I hike a lot, so like there were a lot of ideas that kind of just come from random musings on the trail. So like the old growth, there's two ideas that I can talk about kind of getting incepted there. Was like, one was the rotting dolewoods as they like lean over the path. It's like sometimes when you're hiking, there's a tree that's like knocked over and it's over the path. You have to go under it, and you just think about like this rotting tree above you and it collapsing, right? And like it kind of comes from that fear that I would get when I was hiking under trees like that. And like the old growth canopy, the Dolewood canopy, and like being able to kind of go up into the boughs and go from tree to tree. Obviously there's stuff like wood elves and things in other fantasy settings that like kind of evoke that, but like some of that comes from hiking in the redwoods and just kind of imagining, there's just these tall trunks, and then way up there, all the branches are kind of crisscrossed, and like imagining this kind of separate world from you. I'd say the hardest path set was actually probably the ravine. That one draws on some of the like hot potato mechanics with like the ranger token and the bridge do come from some like hiking I've done, but like some of it draws more from like tropes like the bats and the spiders, giant spiders, than like actual experience. And so to kind of roundabout answer your question, the places where it drifted more away from concrete like experience, I think was the harder stuff to like realize in a way that felt grounded or that I could picture. So yeah. Derek is up next. Derek asks, during my first playthrough of the Earthborne Rangers campaign, I felt a lot of pressure from the daytimer. I didn't want the quote-unquote bad thing to happen, so I avoided almost every cool interaction with people on the path. Given it is an open-ended game, I feel like that may just be a me thing. Is this something you hear from people a lot?
I get sort of mixed. Like some people, I have heard that from some people, but I've heard from other people that they accidentally let some of the timers run out because they're too busy doing
too distracted.
They're too distracted by the new thing. And I, as an ADHD person, definitely am guilty of that. Someone pops off the path deck and I'm like, I immediately want to do what this person's offering and forget about what I was currently doing. And I think you guys even saw some of that when we played through Legacy. And a certain animal showed up and I was like, we're doing that.
That's right.
I just want to please everyone I run into when I play the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Just want to be a nice person.
It's kind of the game, really. I mean, I think what it comes like, that's the experience of the game, is like balancing one goal against all these other things that are introduced to you as like cool opportunities, and whether or not you want to take them and risk maybe not doing the thing you were planning on doing to do this other thing that also sounds cool. But I do think I think because of conditioning by other games, I think the expectation is a bad thing will happen when that timer is met and you haven't done the thing. But I feel like in our game, it's not. It's usually
Yes.
Usually. Yeah.
usually not that bad. It's just different, So I think that's just like maybe, Derek, if you play through again, you can just maybe try a different approach, knowing what happens, and live in the moment.
Yeah, one of the things when I was giving demos at PAX, I would always get asked, or not always, but like I would sometimes get asked, like, so what's the goal? Like, what's the objective? And my answer was usually kind of whatever you want. Like you'll pick up quests as you go. You'll have like a main story, but you decide what's your priority and what you're doing at any given moment. And like you said, like that is the game. And a lot of the difficulty, quote unquote, comes from how much can you do in a day and how many of these tasks can you accomplish? Yeah.
That's essentially what I found myself saying too. Especially like explaining the parameters of the demo. You're just initially showing them how to travel or traverse and eventually travel away so you can pursue a mission if it runs that long. But once they get that, then that question is sort of satisfied.
Well, I think to Maxine, what you're saying there and what Andrew said earlier, like that was kind of this core desire for the player experiences, like trying to balance how much you can complete. And we want you to have your main mission and then get all of these people offering you these side activities and constantly be asking yourself, can I fit that in too? Can I fit that in too? And like until you have just too much in your hands, right? And like you set your own difficulty. And, to this question about the timer, sometimes the first few days we don't really give you any timer, and there are times when like the timer is a lot more wide open or it gives you more pressure, so we try to kind of vary it up. But we could have just given you no timer in the game at all, and that would be a different game experience, maybe not necessarily worse, but like in that world you can take things on like very just at your own pace, right? Wait to do each thing individually, but we still wanted that kind of tense, interesting game experience of, am I going to make it? And so by putting these kind of higher time pressures on you, it kind of forces that decision of you trying to juggle multiple things at once. But to some of the reward discussion from earlier this episode, like there's powerful rewards, but like all the critical rewards we give you as part of the main story. And so like, all those side activities that people offer you are totally optional, and like the game is totally playable if you don't complete them and if you don't want to take them on. So we're trying to offer you this pressure to juggle as much as you can, but we're trying to offer it in this like also this optional way. So it's up to you whether or not we strike that balance. At least from what we've heard from people, I do think there's some people like you who feel the presence of any time pressure, and then there are some people who ignore it. I think we've mostly struck that balance. I know that like people sometimes find the like no time pressure at all at the beginning a little off-putting, but I think it accurately sets our expectations for the rest of the game.
I just wanted to mention it's a little bit of a diverting here, but I'm more of a novice player. But I'm starting another playthrough, and I found myself. I mentioned that it was a little overwhelming to try to please every character you run into, but I've found myself this time around playing them more, engaging with them in a strategic way. So I really welcome running into them because, like, I really wanted Uravas to travel with me, so I took on the helping hand mission because of her focus test ability to help me find someone else, because I was going to use her to find Ben Amon to travel away even farther. It was really fun to just take these missions on, and there's always the opportunity to reluctantly no longer help them, and just at least you get a little bit of soothing fatigue, which maybe isn't something that higher level players even care about because they have other ways to soothe fatigue, but I feel like with my build it's always kind of difficult. Anyways, it's really fun to try to make that work, and it's always surprising when it doesn't work too, like when Quizzy shows up and then I know Ura no longer needs to be around, so then I can't use her test to like find Benamon to travel 2 locations away. So I'm really enjoying interacting and taking on side missions and seeing how I can capitalize on the day with these extra followers and stuff.
Also, Evan, you call yourself a novice player.
Well, compared to you all, for sure.
Oh, but you've played a lot of Earthborne Rangers at this point.
Yeah, I feel really confident about teaching the game, but there's this higher level stuff that I don't always. I'm not a strong card player. I don't play a lot of card games, so there's a lot of builds that I just can't really wrap my head around sometimes. So,
All right, I think we can probably squeeze in our last questioner here, right?
Sure.
All right,
We're about 90 minutes.
Gonna hit our 140 mark that we always hit.
We're gonna fly past it if we do the we do the stuff you're into.
Stuff we're into.
All right, should we save?
We have one question left,
and no indie
backlog.
corner either. So, yeah,
That's
factor
true.
that in.
Yeah.
So I think we should do it. This is the last backlog question.
Braids Mama asks, I just finished The World of EBR, the book. The book, of course, introduced many mysteries of the Valley, like the origins of X or the true nature of Y. In general, would you say that you have decided the answers to most of these unknowns, or do you expect to make them up as you go along?
A little bit of column A, a little of column B. For the core ideas, I know what's up. We're not making those up as we go along. Like, it's not like Lost where there's just no plan, or like Battlestar Galactica where there's no plan and it's just like whatever. The core things are definitely set, and as we go through the new the campaign expansions and those come out in the subsequent years, you'll find a connective thread of all those ideas. But I also think that, like, even though I might have answers to some of the other things that are kind of raised as like, oh, what's this thing? There's some things that I think that are just more fun to not resolve and to let your imagination take you wherever it goes. Because I think what you imagine for your story or your version of the setting, because like once it's in your hands, like you're going to bring all of your experience and your ideas and everything that you've ever encountered in your life to the table, and there's no way for us to account for that. So I'd rather just let your imagination take it. If it's not super important to the story, just does it really matter if like the real answer?
And we get amazing posters about the Terravor from
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I think that's way more fun. It gets like when I, like, one of my favorite things to do, like one of my favorite books, like role-playing source books, is the Forgotten Realms book from 3rd edition. That book is fantastic. It's beautiful art, chock full of information, but it's just, that's the one. Oh man, I love that book so much.
On demand RPG books.
I love it so much. But it doesn't, while it has answers to a lot of things, it's mostly just a bunch of seeds and ideas to get your imagination going. And I just think that's a lot more fun.
I agree.
All right. Braids Mama also asked, the path card challenge icon interactions feel like the big innovation of EBR. Every time a deer eats a plant, it feels like a small triumph of emergent narrative through game mechanics. With that in mind, which are your favorite terrain sets from the core game from either a gamey, mechanical, or narrative thematic standpoint? On the other side of the coin, are there any terrain sets you wish you could have developed further or didn't really hit the mark somehow? That kind of touches on what we talked about a little bit already. I'm trying to think.
I really like the river. I really like the river path set a lot. Feels great to like snatch a fish out of the water, and soothe some fatigue, and then like watch the bears do the same thing. I also really like the old growth and how the bear sloth, how any mammal will interact with the cloud hive.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, feels very like on point, you know.
I think my favorite set, as far as like it kind of coming together, might be the Mountain Pass. It definitely came out a little harder than it was intended, but I think the kind of combination of animals being scared off and flitting, or like listening to the meadowlarks to get a warning, and like the shale scree sliding around. I've climbed a lot of mountains, and so like that one really captures, I talked earlier about trying to capture these things from the trail, right? Like the shale scree. There's actually this exact moment that card came out of, where we were kind of like on this shale, and we all kind of started sliding right around, and that kind of inspired that card. And like getting circled by a vulture, and like them landing and kind of, but then scaring them off, but being kind of creeped out by these frankly enormous birds. Like obviously, in real world hiking, I don't have quite as much or dramatic interaction with creatures as you do in our game, but like it still captured some of that. So I think that's my favorite, as far as like capturing some of what I was setting out to do.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I like the mountain's one of my favorites. I think that it feels like it does capture a lot of that, like being up in the mountains vibe. And I like how dangerous it is. I also really like the swamp, because
You like the hard sets.
I do. Like, I think it's just I really like how that turned out, and just how deadly it is, how dangerous it is, and how much in contrast that is into like some of the other path sets. So it's like it really feels like when you go to the swamp, it's going to be dangerous, and you need to be prepared. And I really, really like that.
As far as sets I wish I'd done a little differently,
They're all perfect.
yeah, they're all perfect by the game. No, I mean, like, I think, it's an easy answer because it's probably one of the more maligned cards, but like, I wouldn't actually change it that much, but I probably would change Whispering Fields a little.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I'd still keep the dynamic of stuff on it and jumping out at you and everything. Like, I think a lot of it, my regret is more that it breaks too many of our rules and just creates a few too many problems in how it interacts with like missions and things.
Yeah, that's fair.
Flood cards.
So like I think we could have had basically the same design, but a little more integrated with the other systems, so it didn't like break so many missions, necessitate redesigning so many missions. There's so many cool mission ideas that we're like, oh no, Whispering Fields ruins that.
Yeah, that's fair. But then, like, I think I've said on this podcast before, like Whispering Fields really helped me out in one of the main storyline missions. And if it had not been there, I don't think I would have been able to do it solo. So thank you, with Whispering Fields. It was pretty cool for it to show up when it did, and then I was like, oh, this is actually super helpful. Yeah, it was pretty great.
I like the Lakeshore when all the Lutrinals are gone, because I need prey for luring out something larger.
Oh yeah, so like all the Lutrinals are tied up on lure, and then you can just walk down.
Then they don't give me any trouble.
Yeah. Poor Lutrinals.
All right, cool. Well, thank you everybody, and thank you for your patience as we took a few episodes to get to your questions. So that brings us to our final segment, Stuff We're Into. The very creatively named Stuff We're Into. No indie game corner this week, but Anders will be back next time. Who wants to start us off? Evan, what have you been playing?
Yeah, well, I'm still dabbling in UFO 50. I'm trying to figure out when I'm going to finish Rail Heist. I feel like I'm really close to beating it, and then I'll probably give UFO 50 a break for a little bit. But I did get Sea of Stars because it was on sale. It's that pixel art game that's kind of a love letter to Chrono Trigger, I think, mainly. I really loved the look of it, and I'm not super far into it, but I'm enjoying it, and it seems like it's got a lot of cool potential. Because I'm comparing it to Chrono Trigger, I'm a little disappointed by the music because I was so into the soundtrack of Chrono Trigger, and it's just hard to beat that.
Yeah, Chrono Trigger has one of the best soundtracks of all time.
Yeah.
So
I remember
that's a hard
when
comparison.
yeah, when during the 2020 Olympics, Tokyo Olympics, was that it?
I don't remember.
The music they used for transitioning between events and stuff was always this beautiful instrumental rendition of a video game, a popular video game song. And
cool.
I remember hearing a song from Chrono Trigger that I really like while watching the Olympics, and I was just blown away. I haven't been able to find the way to get that soundtrack, but I would love to if anyone knows what I'm talking about, because I would listen to that. I think the song was Robo's theme.
Robo's theme? I love that one.
Yeah, and they did this beautiful instrumental rendition of it, and I just can't figure out how to listen to it again.
I can't imagine the Olympics doing something that you could not purchase. Like,
I know. I honestly, I haven't looked that hard into going to like an Olympics related website.
I bet you can get the like commemorative DVD that has all of the performances.
But anyway, Sea of Stars is a lot of fun, and there's cool little mini games like fishing and stuff. So I'm having fun with it when I have the time to play. So
I tried playing.
One of those, what's that?
I was going to say I tried playing that game.
Did you?
Yeah, it lost me with the writing.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, they used because like there's like a wizard or something, and I forget if you're like an adept and you're applying to go to this wizard college, or if there's like you're like kind of like a fish out of water going to this place, and they talk about like getting you acclimated, and they use the word onboarding.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
In the dialogue, and I was like,
brought me out of it. Yeah,
boo.
Yeah.
Immediately pulled me out. Like, get onboarding out of this fantasy game.
You're going to be synergizing with
exactly.
That was unfortunate. I do remember that.
Yeah, it really stuck out, and it's just I couldn't get over it. It just ruined it.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. But it's a beautiful game. So
it is very pretty.
All right. Who's up next? Maxine?
Sure. Mine's pretty easy. I downloaded the early access beta for Path of Exile 2, which, if you don't know, is like a homage to old school Diablo. But Path of Exile 2, it's good. I was a little on the fence at first. I was like, this is clearly very much draws inspiration from Diablo 2 and a little bit from like Path of Exile 1, to be honest, in the way that it like starts. And I was digging it. I was like, this is pretty cool. I'm playing as like a mercenary who has like a crossbow that operates almost like a medieval gun. Like it, shoots multiple times and then has to reload, like whatever. But the gameplay is really fun. But then it was the boss of the first act sold me. So I got all the way through the first act of the game, like, this is good, I'm enjoying it. The boss of the first act, I was like, this is very cool. Like, this is an extremely cool boss fight. Light spoilers for Path of Exile 2, but he starts off as just a big dude with a sword, and he's like a vampire, so he has like some vampire powers. And then you get him down to half health. He's got like really telegraphed attacks that are easy to dodge, but do a ton of damage when they hit. So you really have to be dodging every single one of his attacks, but you feel really good when you do. It's very like Dark Souls meets Diablo.
Okay.
As opposed to like Diablo 4, where you just kind of stand there and get hit, and then you drink a potion and you just get hit and you don't care. you really do have to be learning the attack patterns of the boss. And then he turns into like a wolf, and he's got like an entirely new set of skills. And then you get that down to half, and then all of a sudden he's got a third form, which is like his like true vampire form. And then the boss fight actually really starts. The whole time he's taunting you, he's like waxing poetic on how he's gonna kill you. It's like very cool. He summons like a mist, and like wolves come out of it and like start attacking you, and he's like, it's the soundtrack too. It's good.
All right, you're selling me on this, Maxine. So I've played all of the Diablos, but Diablo 3 I thought was, I finished it, but it was kind of boring. Diablo 4 finished that, but that was like the first game in my life that I actually fell asleep while playing.
I believe it. I believe it.
Because it just takes no thought,
It's too easy.
It's way too easy.
It's way too easy.
That's never happened before. Like, nod off and be like, oh, and I'm still alive. Like, how's that possible? I don't know. So it sounds to me, because I looked at the trailer for Path of Exile 2, and I was like, this looks just like Diablo. But I haven't enjoyed the last couple Diablos very much. This is a return to form, you're telling me, or better, like an evolution.
Did you play Path of Exile 1?
No.
Okay, so there's certain things about Path of Exile that are very weird and different, and like if you're coming into it from a Diablo perspective, you'll be like, whoa, all my skills are gems, like this is weird.
Okay.
But what's cool is like you have this massive skill tree of passive abilities that looks just ridiculous, like ludicrous. It's so big. I'll share a picture
as well.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Is it in 2?
Yes.
Okay.
It's bigger than in Path of Exile 1.
Excellent.
Yeah. Every skill you can attach support gems to that alter the skill. So you can, like, I have an explosive grenade that I shoot from my crossbow because, whatever. And then it like goes on a short delay and then it explodes. And then I attached a scatter shot gem to that skill, which makes it shoot 3 grenades that do slightly less damage. So you can like modify and customize your skills, which is pretty cool. The writing, I'll be honest, I didn't pay super close attention to the writing until I was starting to get close to that Act 1 boss.
Okay.
Because I did find it really interesting that there's like a personal vendetta that you have against this Act 1 boss. So I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I'm into this. Like, I actually really want to kill this guy. But like the first like 2 hours or so, I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm in a field and everything's bad.
Right.
So I wouldn't say, I think the writing in Diablo 4 actually captured me a little bit more because I do know a lot of Diablo lore. And so going back to some of the books that I've read is like, okay, that's pretty cool. I'm into this. But yeah, like the gameplay in Diablo 3 and 4 is so rudimentary. I find that you're either standing there killing everything without trying, or you're dead and you didn't know why.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Path of Exile, it's very clear, like when you die, it's like, okay, I see what I did wrong. It's very much like Elden Ring or Dark Souls. Like that attack is unblockable, so I have to do this or that. There's only been one boss that I fought that was like frustratingly difficult. And then I just leveled up a little bit, came back and beat it. So I'm enjoying it. It's good.
Cool.
Yeah.
I might be giving it a try tomorrow, so I'm curious to see.
I've heard that it has couch co-op as well, which I haven't been able to take advantage of, but I really want to.
Yeah, I saw that in the trailer. It looks cool.
Yeah. I want to introduce it to my brother so I can play with him because we played Diablo 4 together, and yeah, same deal. He was straight up falling asleep during part of it. So.
God, I'm glad I'm not alone.
You're not alone. Diablo 4 is the game I play when I just want to turn my brain off. But Path of Exile, like I need to be really involved to be playing it. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'll jump in and keep repping UFO 50 for one more week.
Nice.
This last we were at PAX, so I didn't get to play as much, but this last stint I played one of the games called Mini and Max, which was actually one of the longer games. It had quite a campaign. It's a little side scroller, and you start in this room, and you're locked inside this pretty small like little bedroom. And so it's a side scroller, and like honestly, it's only a few tiles big. And then I don't even remember how you figure it out, but you figure out that you can make yourself shrink. And so just by holding down on the D-pad, you shrink, and the room becomes giant, right? And so it's kind of like a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids kind of thing. But even then, like I was like, I can run around this room, but it's still a pretty small room. Like, there's a decent, each tile is like a level, but there's not that many tiles. And so I'm like, okay, this is going to be a pretty short game. And then slight spoilers for Mini and Max from UFO 50, but at a certain point, you talk to somebody and you find out that you can shrink again.
Oh, no.
And so
cool.
then you can shrink down to like a microscopic level. And like, this opens up the world to just such a sheer scope that they actually procedurally generate a lot of it.
Interesting.
Wow.
Very clearly, because they can't like create maps for all of these different microscopic, the surface of the doorknob in microscopic land.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
And then there's like all these puzzles, because anything you're holding when you shrink or grow shrinks or grows with you. So there's all these puzzles where you need to bring things. You need to like take a fly and like bring it into a different size category and then ride it.
It's like Alice in Wonderland.
Like all these different kind of clever things. And there's like these whole societies that live at the microscopic level of different people all around. And like it's the shrinking, and the shrinking mechanic also elegantly handles some of the other things like fast travel. So you can just grow, walk over to this side of the room, and then shrink over there. And like, so your like mini map and your fast travel is all just handled through these different levels of size. Very clever little game.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Honestly, it could totally, like, much like a good handful of games in this collection. Somebody could have probably sold this game on its own and it would have done just fine. Like, I haven't 100%ed it, but I did get like, you get gold if you complete the game, and then you get turn it into like cherry or whatever, a red if you 100% it. So I haven't, or like you get some higher level achievement. So I haven't 100%ed it, but I did finish it last week. So
Cool.
that was pretty fun.
Cool. Man, I want to play that game.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
Can't
fun.
come out on console
Same.
soon enough.
All right, Andrew, take us home.
All right. So I've been these past few weeks like preparing for a retreat that I'm going on next week that I'm not sure if I want to talk about on the podcast yet, but if I do, I will. So that's really what I've been into. Been a lot of meditating, very strict diet, and I'm leaving tomorrow, so I'm very excited. So since I'm not necessarily going to talk about that, I will say that I watched a movie on the plane that I really enjoyed that I wanted to recommend, and that is Superman, the Christopher Reeve story.
Oh, yes.
I watched that on the flight up, and I I don't know what I was expecting, but holy cow! I essentially just, it was like just 2 hours of crying, like trying to keep it together next to these people next to me, so I'm not just like a blubbery mess. But it's relentless. But I thought it was fantastic. I'm not really sure where you can watch it. I'm not sure what service it's on. But I think if you are at all a fan of Superman, the old Superman, or are curious in learning about Christopher Reeve, I learned a lot about him that I did not know, especially his life after his accident, which I was in college at the time and kind of sort of paid attention. Like there were moments in the documentary where I was kind of like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. Oh, I remember that thing. But there was a lot of it that I just didn't know. And it's an incredible story that really puts your life in perspective. And so I can't recommend it enough. So yeah, that's the one thing. I'm definitely into it. I don't know if I'll ever watch it again, but I do think it's very very much worth watching if you're interested in checking it out.
Yeah, it looks like it's streaming on Max.
Oh,
according
okay.
to
Oh
Google.
yeah, Max says all that. Not that this is a
Yeah, it's a
correlation,
DC
but
thing.
Yeah, DC thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a DC production.
Oh, it is okay.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, check it out if you want a good cry. And also just to if you need to feel grateful for what you have, I think it's great for that. Yeah, so I think that's it. I think maybe we should also mention here at the end that next podcast week, I think we're all going to be on vacation. So
Oh yeah, it'll be the holidays.
yeah, so we might not be back. I think don't expect us back until the new year, and then we'll hit it. So we might have a little bit of a break here, I think.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Yes,
Yeah.
happy holidays. I hope everyone has a delightful, wonderful, beautiful holiday season. That goes for all you too.
Too bad Anders couldn't be here to close out the year with us.
Yeah, it is too bad. He's stuck doing teacher training, which I'm sure is valuable.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you one last time, everybody we saw at PAX, and we'll see all of you in the new year. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.
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 Bye.